Because I saw after ANZ you moved on to Ansett, which I believe is the airline, or was the airline.
Was the airline.
And I saw there you joined as a BA.
Yep.
And I thought that was interesting because you've kind of come up through the HR path, and then you've kind of gone into this BA role. But I guess what your experience there with ANZ would explain that transition. You started to move in that direction away from HR towards the project side.
Yeah, almost immediately. So if
Yeah.
I think going into the transformation role, so ANZ Global gave me a taste of sort of pace, working at pace and working with really specific outcomes.
Yeah.
And then, I did the capacity planning role for a while. And then this role came up at Ansett, which was their business transformation program. And it was an analyst role. And, I thought, that would be good.
Yeah.
Let me try something like that. Again, in that transformation sort of BA change space. That role was really about process re-engineering. So looking at a business problem and going, how would you do it differently? Not so much tech at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, the people side of it. So how do you re-engineer to save FTE to take cost out of the business? So taking that cost out lens as well. And so I was there for pretty much from 2000 to collapse, so which was 2001. So just I think 3 weeks shy of 2 years.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a couple of things there I've got some thoughts around. Based on experience, what do you think makes a good BA?
Well, I still hold the view that there are two types of BA. So there's a business BA and a technical BA.
Okay.
And a business BA is curiosity and being able to join the dots between what someone's saying, what someone does, and what could happen. A technical BA is very much around requirements gathering, understanding process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I still, being able to translate into a technical solution, very different. I say they're different roles.
I think what's interesting there is, in both situations, they're ultimately kind of underlying the understanding the underlying problem, but with a degree of an understanding of the potential solution.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. I think if a BA is doing their job properly, they're constantly thinking about what they're looking for.
Yes.
If they're just doing their job to produce a mediocre, I'm completing a report, you're not a BA.
Yeah, that's right. So it's more than requirements gathering; it's understanding, and deeply
absolutely.
understanding. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you also mentioned there, as we know, Ansett obviously went into administration, and I think what stood out for me is you were still sort of relatively young into your career at that point, and going through a situation where a business is collapsing, going into administration. That's that's a big emotional experience to go through very early in your career. What did you kind of experience through that time?
You're 100% correct. It was an incredibly confronting experience, and not for the reason that you might think that an organisation's gone into collapse.
Yeah.
It was confronting because I was an employee that continued to work beyond collapse, because I was in HR at the time. I was in proper HR at the time, so like working for regional airlines, looking at awards and things like that. And I continued to work because I was in HR to be able to, answer queries and phone calls and things like that. But I also worked on the award and the costing for Ansett Mark II.
Yeah.
So the startup, Tesna. And so I was working all the way through. And so that with that came a lot of guilt because some of the phone calls that we're getting is I can't put food on the table.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I'm sitting there going, I'm still getting an income nicely. I'm going to get a redundancy payment, beautiful, but I'd only been in the organisation for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so that comes with a lot of guilt. And I remember saying to my mum at one point, I think I need to go. My mum worked in a mental health clinic, just to be clear. I think I need to go and see one of the psychologists to deal with this. And then having that conversation meant that I dealt with it, so I'd moved on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
but it was something that was, really thinking about this is actually impacting me here.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think that kind of survivor guilt is really common in a redundancy situation. And, look, this week we've just had Telstra announced 2,800 redundancies, and there's the psychological impact for those people that are now probably worried about their jobs and their incomes and so forth. But there is also an impact on the people left behind.
Yeah.
I noticed after that you kind of briefly moved to GE Capital, where you spent about a year or so.
A year.
Project. Yeah. It wasn't a very long stint. I kind of wondered what was going on.
So it was a role that I picked up after Ansett. Obviously, that wasn't going to be a long-term role.
Yeah.
Once it collapsed, and it was a project role. Probably my first real foray into leading a project, being the project manager.
Okay.
There, it was an HR project.
Right.
But it was an HR project that actually led me again more into sort of systems thinking, because it was an HR project that had call center rostering optimization involved in it. So I had enjoyed my time at GE, but GE is a very structured organisation, and there's a particular GE way of working.
Yeah.
And I don't tend to conform that way.
Yeah.
So at GE, and I shouldn't. This is my experience. So very different. If people have different experiences, but I felt that I had to conform, and I couldn't be myself and have my own independent views and take independent pathways. And while I was at GE, I was asked to join a consulting organisation.
Yeah,
so that's why I moved on.
But you know what? I think that's again, it's really insightful to hear that experience that you had, because every culture is slightly different. And just because it's a big, large corporate that's successful doesn't mean it's the right culture for you. And I think having the courage or the bravery at that point, or any point in your career, to kind of join somewhere and kind of go, okay, well, I'm on a project, I'll see the project through, but maybe this isn't really where I need to be long term, and move on. I think that's the kind of courage we should encourage in people.
Yeah, and do it quickly would be what I would say, is that when it's not right.
Yeah.
And I've lived a charmed life. I've had fabulous experiences in every role I've had, including GE. But when it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah. I think sometimes you need to know what's not right to know what is right. I'm trying to get those words out, but you understand what I mean. As in, you got to see what's not right for you to understand or appreciate really what you do want as well.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the journey.